The first time I realized something was seriously wrong wasn't when Naomi asked me for money. It was when she handed me an actual invoice because I forgot to put the iron back in the closet. I honestly laughed, not a fake laugh either. I bent over laughing because I thought she was messing with me. She wasn't. She slid a printed sheet across the kitchen table like she worked in accounting. $12, she said. I looked up. For what exactly? You left the iron on the laundry shelf instead of putting it away. And? It's in the agreement. What agreement? She pointed at the refrigerator. There, held up by two little magnets shaped like avocados, was a whiteboard titled in giant pink letters, Household Value System. Below it were columns, bonuses, penalties, premium services, late fees. I actually thought she'd bought one of those stupid couple games from TikTok. What is this? I asked, grinning. She crossed her arms. I went to a relationship seminar yesterday. Oh? The speaker explained financial dominance in modern relationships. Women constantly perform unpaid emotional and domestic labor. Men benefit from it for free. Financial dominance? It's about respecting value. I looked at the board again. Leave dirty dishes, -$5. Forget laundry, -$8. Ironing a shirt, premium service, $15. Dinner preparation, client contribution, $10. I stared for a few seconds before looking back at her. So, she nodded. So you're serious? Completely. I swear I thought this was some weird role-playing thing. Like, maybe she'd watched a podcast, got excited, wanted to spice things up. So I played along. Fine, I said, pulling out my phone. Should I pay by card or cash? She smiled. Card is easier. I transferred $12. She kissed me on the cheek. See? Healthy communication. I laughed again. Big mistake. Because after that, it never stopped. The next morning I made coffee before work. She walked into the kitchen, took one sip, smiled, then opened a notebook. Coffee ingredients, she said. Since I didn't ask for it, that's your choice, so no reimbursement. Reimbursement? But I did wash your mug afterward. She wrote something down. $5. I blinked. You washed one mug. It still took my time. Naomi, my time has value. I just shook my head. You're unbelievable. No, she corrected. I'm finally respecting myself. That phrase became her favorite sentence. Every single discussion ended exactly the same way. My time has value. A week later, our apartment looked less like a home and more like the reception desk of a dentist's office. The whiteboard kept growing. New categories appeared almost every day. Bathroom cleaning, trash removal, changing bed sheets, cooking, shopping. Even reminding me about appointments somehow became a paid service. Every evening, she'd stand in front of the refrigerator with a marker while I unpacked groceries. Trash, yesterday. She tapped the board. $12. You literally watched me take it out. 3 hours late. What? The agreed window was before 6. There was no agreed window. There is now. I rubbed my face. You can't be serious. I absolutely can. Then she'd smile like she'd just won a court case. The crazy part? She genuinely believed she was fixing our relationship. One Friday, I decided to cook dinner myself. Steak, mashed potatoes, wine, candles. She came home, looked around, and actually seemed impressed. This smells amazing. Thanks. She sat down, took a bite, then asked, Did you clean while cooking? Yeah. So the kitchen will only need maintenance. What does that mean? It means I'll only charge 8 instead of 15. I slowly put my fork down. You're charging me after I cook dinner? I still have to clean. I stared at her for a long second. before bursting into laughter again. This has to be the funniest relationship I've ever been in. She didn't laugh. Instead, she opened her banking app and held her phone toward me. The transfer whenever you're ready. I wish I could tell you that was the point where I finally snapped. It wasn't. That's probably the most embarrassing part of this whole story. I kept convincing myself this had to burn out eventually. People get obsessed with weird ideas all the time. Someone watches 3 motivational videos and suddenly they're waking up at 5 in the morning. Someone reads one finance book and starts calling coffee an investment. I figured Naomi would get bored after a week or two. Instead, she got better at it. She built spreadsheets, actual color-coded spreadsheets. One evening I walked into the living room and found her sitting on the couch with her laptop. She looked excited. I improved the system. Those 4 words should have scared me. She spun the laptop around. I've added recurring expenses. Recurring? If I remind you to call your mom more than once a month, that's emotional management. Emotional management? $20 monthly. I just stared at her. She kept scrolling. If I notice you're stressed after work and I listen to you vent for more than 15 minutes, that's emotional support. You mean being my girlfriend? No. She smiled like a professor correcting a student. Professional emotional labor. I honestly didn't know whether to laugh or call someone. Then came the receipts, not metaphorical receipts, real ones, printed, folded neatly, left on my desk. One said, laundry assistance, $15, folding clothes, $8, relationship maintenance consultation, $12. I actually framed that last one for about an hour because I thought it was comedy gold. She wasn't amused. Why are you mocking my boundaries? Naomi. No, seriously. I'm not mocking your boundaries. What then? I'm trying to figure out when my girlfriend turned into an accounting department. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stay there. Men always say they want equality until women value themselves. There it was again. That sentence. Every conversation somehow circled back to it. If I questioned anything, I was insecure. If I laughed, I was dismissive. If I refused to pay, I was apparently participating in financial abuse. One Saturday afternoon, I decided we needed to have a normal day. No whiteboard, no money, no invoices. I drove us to the park, bought ice cream, and we sat on a bench watching kids chase pigeons around the fountain. For about 20 minutes, it actually felt like my girlfriend was back. She leaned against my shoulder. She smiled. She talked about a movie she wanted to watch. I remember thinking, finally, maybe we're done with this insanity. Trying to keep the mood light, I told her one of my grandfather's favorite jokes. Okay, listen, I said. An old miser is lying on his deathbed. Barely able to speak, he whispers, "Honey, are you here?" His wife says, "Yes, dear, I'm right here." He asks, "Are the kids here?" "Yes, we're all here." "What about the grandkids?" "They're here too." The old man opens one eye and says, "Then why the hell is the kitchen light still on?" I started laughing before I even reached the punchline. My grandfather used to tell that joke every Thanksgiving. Naomi looked at me for 2 seconds. No smile, nothing. Then she shrugged. "I mean, electricity isn't free." I blinked. "Seriously?" "What? That's your reaction? What reaction were you expecting?" "I don't know. Maybe laughing?" She took another bite of her ice cream. The joke would have been funnier if he'd installed motion sensors. I couldn't believe it. I was still smiling, hoping she was joking. So Grandpa gets outperformed by modern energy efficiency? I'm just saying, he would have saved more money. I laughed anyway, because the whole thing was so absurd. She looked genuinely confused. I don't understand why that's funny. Something about that hit me harder than it should have. It wasn't even the joke. It was realizing that every single conversation somehow ended with money. Even a stupid joke about an old man on his deathbed somehow became a financial analysis. Driving home, she suddenly opened her notes app. I almost forgot. I sighed. What now? You drove today. Yeah? I usually contribute gas money when we're going somewhere I choose. Okay. But today you suggested the date. I already knew where this was going. So, technically, she looked at me with a completely straight face. That transportation was your gift. I nodded slowly. Sure. So dinner is still separate. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. We hadn't talked about us, not once the entire day. Not our future, not work, not family, not vacations, not dreams. Every single conversation somehow became a transaction, and I started wondering whether Naomi still saw me as her boyfriend, or just her highest-paying customer. For the next couple of weeks, I started paying attention instead of arguing. Once you stop trying to win every little fight, you notice things you would have missed before. Naomi wasn't just keeping score with me anymore. She was keeping score with life. If her friend gave her a ride somewhere, she'd immediately calculate what gas would have cost. If her sister watched her dog for an afternoon, she'd say, I owe her about $40. She couldn't just enjoy anything. Everything had a price tag attached to it. One night, I got home exhausted after a brutal day at work. My back was killing me. I'd skipped lunch. And honestly, all I wanted was to collapse on the couch next to my girlfriend. Instead, she met me in the hallway holding a calculator. I'm updating this week's balance. I didn't even take my shoes off. Can it wait? It'll only take a minute. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door. What now? She started reading. You left a coffee cup in the sink yesterday. Yep. $5. You borrowed my hoodie. Seriously? I washed it. It was already clean. I refreshed it. I blinked. Refreshed it. It smelled like cologne. It was my cologne. I still had to wash it. She tapped another line. I also organized the pantry. I didn't ask you to. It still benefits you. Then she smiled proudly. So after everything, you currently owe me $98. I stood there looking at her. $98 for existing in my own apartment. I transferred the money without saying a word. She looked surprised. I thought you'd argue. I'm tired. She kissed my cheek. See, this is healthy. Healthy. That word echoed in my head the entire night. The woman I used to spend hours talking with now believed invoicing her boyfriend was emotional maturity. The next weekend, I tried one last time to save whatever was left of us. I booked a table at the little Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. Same corner booth, same waiter, even the same bottle of wine we'd shared back then. When Naomi walked in, she actually smiled. Oh my God. You remember? Of course. For a few minutes, everything felt normal again. We laughed about old stories, talked about our first apartment, the terrible couch we'd bought off Facebook Marketplace, the road trip where we got lost for 6 hours because I refused to ask for directions. I felt my shoulders relaxing. Maybe all this financial nonsense was finally fading. Then the waiter brought dessert, a tiny chocolate cake with one candle. Happy anniversary, he said. Naomi looked at it, then looked at me. This is really sweet. I wanted tonight to be about us. It is. She reached across the table and held my hand. For the first time in months, she squeezed it. I swear my chest almost hurt. I thought, there she is. There's the woman I fell in love with. We got home around 10. She wrapped her arms around my neck while we stood in the kitchen. You know, what? I had a really nice evening. So did I. She smiled. I think tonight could become even more special. I smiled back. I'd like that. She bit her lip, then walked over to the counter, picked up her phone, and opened her banking app. I honestly thought she was checking the restaurant charge. Instead, she turned the screen toward me. I've been thinking. About what? My coach says intimacy is also emotional labor. I didn't answer. She kept talking. When a woman gives herself completely, that's valuable. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Naomi. So I think it's only fair if that energy is appreciated. What are you saying? She said it so casually, it almost sounded rehearsed. $1,000. I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain refused to accept what I'd just heard. What? She tilted her head. Or the handbag I showed you last month. I kept staring. She thought I hadn't understood. I'm not selling myself. She actually raised a finger, as if explaining something to a child. It's an investment in feminine energy. I could hear my own heartbeat. So, I spoke slowly. If I don't buy the bag, she shrugged. Then I probably won't feel emotionally safe enough to be fully vulnerable tonight. Silence. Real silence. The refrigerator hummed behind us. A car drove past outside. Somewhere upstairs a dog barked. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't standing in my home with the woman I loved anymore. I was standing in front of someone negotiating a price list for affection. It wasn't about the money. Hell, I could have bought 10 of those handbags. It was the fact that love had become conditional. Every kiss, every hug, every dinner, every conversation, everything had a price. And the worst part? She honestly believed she was empowering herself. That's when something inside me finally went completely calm. No anger, no shouting, no heartbreak, just one crystal clear thought. Fine, if this relationship is a business, then tomorrow we're opening my accounting department too. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. Not because I was happy, because I'd finally stopped trying to fix something that clearly didn't want to be fixed. Around 3 in the morning, I got out of bed, grabbed my laptop, and started building the most ridiculous spreadsheet I'd ever made. If Naomi wanted a business relationship, I was about to become the most annoying accountant she'd ever met. I didn't make anything up. That was the important part. Every number had to be fair. Every charge had to be based on something real. Apartment rent, utilities, internet, streaming subscriptions, parking, gas, insurance, furniture I'd bought before we even met. The TV, the washing machine, the coffee maker she loved so much. Then I added services, airport transportation, furniture assembly, computer repairs, phone setup, installing shelves, fixing the leaking sink, replacing light fixtures, helping her move, driving her to work when it rained, even emergency late-night pharmacy runs. Every single thing I'd done over the last year suddenly looked very different once it had a dollar sign next to it. I almost laughed while writing, not because it was petty, because it exposed how ridiculous her own system really was. By 7 in the morning, I printed everything, 12 pages, professional font, neat formatting, tables, totals, a logo at the top that simply said, Ethan Home Services, LLC. I may have enjoyed making that part a little too much. Naomi walked into the kitchen, wearing pajamas, and immediately noticed the stack of papers. What's this? I smiled. Our new financial structure. She looked confused. What? You inspired me. She sat down and started flipping through the pages. At first, she smiled, then her smile disappeared. Then her eyebrows started climbing. Apartment occupancy fee? She looked at me. What is this? You live here. We live here. My apartment. She frowned. You've never charged me rent. I've never charged you for leaving an iron out either. She opened another page. Netflix, Spotify, internet, shared premium services. Ethan, market value. She laughed nervously. This isn't funny. I agree, she kept reading. Transportation, Uber Black, every ride to work, surge pricing during rush hour. You can't be serious. You taught me that my time has value. She stared at me. I kept drinking my coffee. Silence filled the kitchen. Then she found the maintenance section. Hanging shelves, $80. Professional installation. You already knew how to do it. Exactly. So, experience costs money. She dropped the papers onto the table. You're making fun of me. No, I'm applying modern financial relationship principles. She crossed her arms. This is different. How? Because couples help each other. I actually had to bite my tongue to stop myself from smiling. I'm sorry. I leaned forward. I thought unpaid labor created unhealthy power dynamics. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I continued. I've apparently been performing unpaid mechanical labor, transportation services, technology support, and property management. She shook her head. That's not what the seminar meant. Oh? No. So explain it. She couldn't. Instead, she reached for the oldest weapon in every losing argument. My coach says, I raised my hand. No. She stopped talking. We're not discussing your coach. He understands relationships. I've been in one with you for almost 3 years. She looked away. I slid the final page toward her. Your current balance. She looked down. Her eyes widened. Amount due. $4,782.60. She looked back up immediately. What the hell is this? The total. I don't have $5,000. I rounded down. Ethan, I shrugged. I gave you loyalty discounts. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. This is insane, I nodded. It is. Finally, Malu. We agreed on something. For the rest of the week, I committed completely to the game. Monday morning, she asked if I could drive her to work, because her car was in the shop. Absolutely, she smiled. Halfway there, I said, you'll receive the invoice tonight. Her smile disappeared. Tuesday, she asked if she could use my laptop, because hers needed an update. No problem. I installed everything she needed. That evening, she received another receipt. Consultation, $65. Wednesday, she asked if I could tighten the loose handle on the bathroom cabinet. I grabbed a screwdriver, fixed it in less than 2 minutes. Then I opened my notebook. Minimum service call. She stared at me. You're kidding. I wish I were. By Friday, the balance she'd owed me had climbed past $5,000. She couldn't sleep anymore. She barely ate. Every time she picked up something in the apartment, she'd stop and ask, do I have to pay for this too? I'd answer exactly the same way every single time. It depends. On what? Whether we're partners. I looked directly into her eyes. Or a business. By the second week, the whole thing had become completely unbearable. By the second week, the whole thing had become completely unbearable. Not just for Naomi, for both of us. The apartment felt like an office where 2 coworkers hated each other, but still had to share a break room. One Tuesday evening, she came home carrying grocery bags. Normally, I'd jump up and help. Instead, I stayed on the couch. She looked at me. Are you seriously not helping? I can. She relaxed. Then I added, moving assistance starts at $12 per trip from the car. She just stood there. Ethan, what? You know I was joking when I started all this. I raised an eyebrow. You printed invoices. So did you. You charged me for washing 1 coffee mug. You charged me for Wi-Fi. I learned from the best. She slammed the grocery bags onto the counter, hard enough for an apple to roll across the kitchen floor. This isn't funny anymore. I nodded. I know. It's exhausting. I know. I feel like I can't do anything without owing you. I know. She looked at me for several long seconds. Then something clicked in her face. She finally understood. Not the numbers, the feeling. She'd been making me feel exactly like that for months. Still, she wasn't ready to admit it. Instead, she tried changing tactics. That night, she climbed into bed, wrapped her arms around me from behind, and rested her head against my shoulder. I miss us. I stayed quiet. We've been so stupid. I still didn't answer. She kissed my neck. We can forget all this. I slowly turned around. Forget all what? The lists, the invoices, the money. I looked at her for a long moment. Okay, her eyes lit up. Really? Sure. She smiled for the first time in days. Then I asked one simple question. Who starts? What? Who admits they were wrong first? The smile disappeared. Silence. I waited. 30 seconds, maybe more. Finally, she sighed. I just wanted to feel appreciated. I appreciated you every single day. You didn't show it. I cooked. I fixed things. I drove you everywhere. I paid almost every major bill. I listened when you had bad days. I surprised you with flowers. I booked vacations. I remembered your mother's birthday better than your own brother. I wasn't yelling. I was just listing facts. So tell me something, Naomi. She looked down. When exactly did you decide none of that counted unless money changed hands? She didn't answer because she couldn't. Instead, she whispered, You don't understand what women go through. I probably don't. I nodded, but I understand what I went through. She started crying, real crying this time. No anger, no lectures, just tears. I ruined everything. I almost reached over to hug her. Almost. Then I remembered the anniversary, the phone screen, the $1,000 price tag for intimacy. And my hands stayed where they were. The next morning, she made breakfast, pancakes, my favorite. She placed the plate in front of me. No charge. She tried to smile. I smiled back. Then I quietly took out my wallet and placed $10 beside her coffee cup. She looked confused. What are you doing? Payment for cooking. Ethan, you said your time has value. She pushed the money back toward me. I don't want it. I slid it back. I insist. I was wrong. Please. I don't want your money. I looked at the bill sitting between us. For months, I'd begged her to hear exactly those words. Now that they had finally come, they felt strangely empty, because they hadn't come from understanding. They'd come from losing. 3 days later, she sat me down in the living room. I deleted everything. The spreadsheet, the whiteboard, the budgeting app, my coach's online group. I left all of it. I nodded. Okay, she frowned. That's it? What do you mean? I thought you'd be happy. I am. No, you're not. She was right. I wasn't. Because something had quietly died over those months. Trust, not love. Trust. Love can survive stupid decisions. Trust has a much harder time. She reached for my hand. I'll change. I believe you. I'll never do this again. I believe that too. She looked relieved. Then I quietly said, but I don't think that's enough anymore. Her face went completely still. What? I don't think I can spend the rest of my life wondering what the next seminar, the next influencer, or the next relationship coach is going to convince you to monetize. Ethan, I don't want to negotiate affection. I don't want invoices. I don't want to wonder whether a hug is genuine or calculated. I don't want to question whether you're kissing me because you love me, or because somebody online told you feminine energy needs premium pricing. She started shaking her head before I even finished. No. Ethan, please. We can fix this. I took a slow breath. I think we already tried. The apartment became painfully quiet. She knew I knew. Neither of us said the words yet, but somehow, we were already saying goodbye. She didn't leave that day, or the next. For almost a week, we lived together like two people, waiting for someone else to make the final decision. We were polite, painfully polite. Good morning. Have a good day. There's pasta in the fridge. Thanks. No fighting, no invoices, no whiteboard, just silence. And somehow that silence hurt more than every argument we'd ever had. One Friday evening, I came home and found moving boxes stacked in the hallway. Naomi was wrapping plates in newspaper. She looked up when she heard the door open. I borrowed some boxes from my sister. I nodded. Okay. I found an apartment. Another nod. When are you moving? Tomorrow. Neither of us cried. I think we'd already done all our crying separately. She packed for a while before breaking the silence. I really thought I was doing something healthy. I know. My coach kept saying, women should never give their labor away for free. I leaned against the kitchen counter. You know what's funny? What? If someone had told you to charge your parents every time you hugged them, you would have called them insane. She looked down. If someone told you to bill your best friend every time you answered the phone, you'd laugh. She slowly nodded. But somehow, I looked around the apartment. Doing it to the person you love sounded empowering. She covered her face for a second. I don't even recognize myself. I believe you. I wasn't trying to become greedy. I know. Her voice cracked. I kept hearing that if I didn't put a price on my effort, people would use me. I stayed quiet. She continued almost in a whisper. And somewhere along the way, I started putting a price on everything. Exactly. That was the whole tragedy. Not because she'd wanted money, because she'd forgotten the difference between appreciation and payment. The next morning, I helped carry her boxes downstairs. Neither of us mentioned charging for labor. Some jokes are only funny once. When everything was finally loaded into her sister's SUV, she walked back toward me, holding a small envelope. What's this? I owe you an apology. She handed it to me. Inside was every dollar I'd ever transferred because of her ridiculous system. Every single one, even the $12 for the iron. I looked at the cash. You kept all of it? She nodded. I couldn't spend it. Why? Because deep down, she smiled through tears. It never felt earned. I closed the envelope and handed it back. No, she frowned. It's yours. I don't want it. But I wasn't trying to get my money back. I gently pushed the envelope into one of her moving boxes. I was trying to get my girlfriend back. She started crying again, the kind where people can't even speak. She hugged me so tightly, I could barely breathe. I'm sorry. I know. I really loved you. I know. I still do. Those 4 words nearly broke me, because I believed her. Love wasn't the problem anymore. Timing was, trust was, choices were. She got into the SUV, closed the door, and they slowly drove away. I stood in the parking lot until the car disappeared around the corner. Then I went upstairs, opened the apartment, and for the first time in months, it was completely quiet. No marker squeaking across a whiteboard, no banking notifications, no discussions about percentages, no invoices waiting on the kitchen table, just silence. Some people think silence feels lonely. That afternoon, silence felt expensive, in the best possible way. Over the next few weeks, friends kept asking what happened. I'd usually laugh and say, we accidentally turned dating into a subscription service. Most people laughed. Then I'd explain the real story. And every single time, someone asked the same question. So, what was the biggest lesson? At first, I gave different answers. Then eventually, I realized there was only one. Relationships stop being relationships the moment every act of kindness becomes a negotiation. Cooking dinner because you love someone isn't labor to invoice. Driving your partner home isn't a commercial transportation service. Fixing a shelf isn't a maintenance contract. Listening after a hard day isn't billable emotional consulting. The second every hug, every favor, every thoughtful gesture starts carrying a receipt. Love quietly packs its bags. These days, my apartment is peaceful, sometimes too peaceful. I still make way too much coffee. I still leave the iron sitting on the laundry shelf sometimes, and every single time I notice it, I laugh, because somewhere in a drawer, I still have one piece of paper I never threw away, the very first invoice. Iron not returned to storage, amount due, $12. I keep it there as a reminder, not of Naomi, not of heartbreak, but of something much bigger. Never let someone convince you that love works better when it starts keeping score. Because the people who believe money can buy or measure everything eventually start believing everything has a price. And there's an old quote I never truly understood until all this happened. People who believe money can do everything are themselves likely to do everything for money. I don't know who first said it, but I know this. If the day ever comes when someone I love hands me an invoice instead of a hug, I'll pay exactly once for the moving boxes,